Today, we're cleaning off the coffee table. Okay, honestly, I already cleaned it off a little bit already. But what I want to do is take everything that's here and move that into a closet that I have that has some networking and server equipment and whatnot, and then use this as sort of a dedicated staging space or YouTube video space or place where a cat can lay down. Just some open space that I can work on things instead of having to resort to the floor or somewhere else. So we're going to take all of this stuff off of here and we're going to move it to the closet over there, and I'm going to go and show you what's in there right now. Now this is the closet. So this is where I kind of wanted to have a little sort of retro networking space here to run different ISP gear. This is the closet under the stairs. If I pan up here, yes, those are my coats and jackets. But essentially, this is a really great sort of soundproof space in the basement that'll let me run some of this somewhat loud gear. And I want to move some of those other machines that we saw earlier over into the mix. But you can see I'm kind of tapped out on space just a little bit. And what I have in here is not great for maintenance and just supporting machines and working around. So we're going to have to make some changes. This is your classic IKEA lack rack. This is one of the newer lacks, so it's really terrible because all the legs are hollow. So anything you try to bolt in there just goes right through the leg and doesn't support it very well. And then here, this is a StarTech 2-post rack here meant for telecom gear. So right now, they're mostly just ISP equipment. So we have Shiva Land Rover, we have 2 US Robotics Total Control, we got the Net Server 8 and the MP8, we got a Portmaster 2E from Lucent. Up here, we just have your sort of modern switch here. We have a Hex-S router, WTI console server, Protel payphone modem, this combination of a Cisco 2600 and Adtran 908. US Robotics modem there was in the works as a little 4-line ISP. We got a checkpoint device here. Don't even know if that works. And then down here is another Land Rover. This is an 80 as opposed to the E+. This one's broken though, from what I remember. It just doesn't do anything. So I might have to dig into that later. But I want to replace this with a proper rack that gives us some more height. And more importantly, I want it to try to be a little bit portable, or should I say movable. So the new rack, I want to be on wheels. Now we'll worry about this situation another time, but I really wanted to try to maximize what I can put in this space. And hopefully everything that's on the table over there can live in here as a sort of little lab center. Back in this area, there's probably just enough room for a UPS and then my Proxmox server sitting on top. Or you could always just keep a cat in here. So to replace that lack rack, we have this 12U Vevor or Vivor, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, open frame rack. So this rack is adjustable from 23 inches deep to 40 inches deep, which is perfect for that closet space over there. And it's probably the cheapest 12U rack that you can get from Amazon with wheels. This thing's got wheels on it, so I can push it in, pull it out of that closet if I ever need to really do any maintenance on it. So from what I understand, this is going to take between an hour and 2 hours to fully assemble. It uses M5 screws instead of bolts to keep it together, which was an interesting design choice. And apparently I was also reading that the screw holes are not tapped already. So you really need an electric driver like this one here. So I got different bits in here, and I'll probably just be sitting on the ground putting this together, listening to some punk music or something. So we'll do a little bit of a time-lapse montage thing and get this thing set up. So here we are about, I don't know, a month later, and yeah, it's built. So it did end up taking probably between half an hour and an hour to get this thing fully built. And if you watched the little montage, you would have seen that I at one point had to switch over to my power drill instead of that just little electric screwdriver, because that thing just eventually gave up with the sheer number of screws that had to be pushed into this thing to get it all together. So after that, it was pretty smooth sailing. And if you're going to do this at home, you would probably benefit from that long Phillips driver bit I was using, because at the corners, there's definitely some hard to reach places. But yeah, it all came together. Now, the only thing that I had to do differently since you last saw this on screen, I didn't film it, but if we get in here to the side, if this is fully compressed, it's 23 inches, but I needed 24 inches. And at the time, I didn't. I was fine with just having this as pushed in as possible. But since then, I bought a KVM console, which I wanted to put in here. What I should say is I bought 2 KVM consoles from the VCF East swap meet. And I think I'm going to put, there's a crappier one that's like a Dell or something with PS2 connectors, and then there's a brand new one from some unknown Chinese company with USB connectors. I think I'm going to put the crappier one in here. And anyway, you need 24 inches of depth to do that. So I had to go from 23 to 24, which means I had to one by one stretch it apart here, which was really easy to do. Again, this will go up to 40 inches, so I'm keeping it 24 for now. Might have to go further in the future, I don't know. And one little caveat of that is this, I don't know, what would you call that, a lid? A top surface here. It doesn't fit really flush over the opening anymore. So I'm planning on this being the front of the rack, and that's the back. And I want to put one machine on top here, and I figured keep the back screwed in, and then there's a nice flat plane over here that we can use. But yeah, this is the point where I think I actually need to start getting some hardware in here. And I don't have a big plan. We covered everything over here that's on the table, and if I pan over here, it's messy again. But this guy's gonna sit on top. Thin client and modem there. I think I'm gonna do like a 1U shelf, put that there. There's another thin client modem on the floor over there. The channel bank, I think I'm gonna take, it has these little brackets that you can't see very well. I think I'm gonna take those off and then flip this on its side and put it at the bottom on a shelf. I'm kind of making this up as I go. So we'll have all of that. The Avocent has to go in here somewhere. That's under there right now. But gonna put the Avocent in here, gonna wanna label all the connectors. Gonna put a PDU in here somewhere. I don't know if I'm gonna put that on the front or the back. But yeah, I think I'm gonna start with the KVM console. I'm gonna put that on top, because if I'm doing stuff on the back and I'm running cables, the cables have to go in the middle, and that KVM console just sort of blocks out the whole space. So that'll go on top. We'll dive into that. And all the stuff you saw in the closet, maybe not all of it. If I'm putting this sort of telco stuff in the front, maybe I'll put that stuff in the back. Because the idea is this thing should be able to just sort of wheel in and out of that closet if I need to access some stuff. It's going to be tight, but right now I'm not really running any of that vintage networking stuff, so that can kind of be storage on the back. But yeah, I'm going to throw some stuff together. I don't even know if that KVM works. I'll have to see if that works. Oh boy, okay. And yeah, I'll check back in with you guys when I'm making some progress. So just a quick little thing here before I actually go ahead and install that KVM console is we need cage nuts for this. You can see these are square holes going along the sides here. So I was going through my stash of cage nuts, and I didn't have anything where the nut and the screw actually matched. I had a whole bunch of different sizes, but nothing that would actually come together. That was actually one of the reasons it took me so long to get to this point of the video, because I needed the hardware to actually do some mounting here. So what I did was I went and I ordered some of these rack screws, carbon steel. Don't know if I believe that. But there are 50 sets in here, so that should probably get us at least one side of this rack done. I don't know about the back. We'll see. We'll see what we can do. But yeah, never really bought actually matching ones before, which is going to be nice. But anyway, these ultimately look like this. So these little nuts here with these wings on the side. So every 3 of these holes, let me bring it in for you here. Every 3 of these is 1 U. So with these flaps going horizontally, you can tuck it back in here. And if the cats aren't dropping everything, then you can situate them. And then you have this screw that will screw in. So makes everything very easy for mounting. These screws, they have this little plastic, I guess you call that a washer or something there. I think I've seen these as rubber before. It's pretty sure that it's both a sound dampening measure as well as just something so that if you're screwing on here, the metal of the screw doesn't wear away at the metal of the rack. But these are important when you have something rack mountable. So here is, let's push everything away here. So here's the PDU that I'm going to be installing. So I have a couple PDUs, but this one has ears already. So this should be pushed up right to the top of the list for things that I'm going to work with instead of some of the other stuff I have without ears. But anyway, after you have that installed, you just line it up and you put a screw through and it would stay fit. But yeah, I figured I would cover that right now before actually putting anything in, just so you know how exactly I am affixing this equipment to the rack when you have these square holes. Okay, I cannot make this up. So I'm putting in the KVM console. It's the first thing I'm putting in here. And what I realized is that these M6 screws are too big for the holes in these ears. So luckily I was able to go back to the 2-post network rack that I have, and I found this handful of, I think there's 6 of these M5 nuts, and then I got 6 of these silver M5 screws. So this thing should really probably be in here with 8, but I have 6 right now, so we're just gonna go with that. Well, the sheer amount of buffoonery today is next level. So you might see that I only have 1 screw keeping things in place in the front on either side, but you can't really see it very well from this angle. Yeah, apparently one of those nuts was an M6, and then one of the screws stripped, and then one of the nuts broke, and yeah, let's just say this is in here for now. But there was another problem. Yeah, so guess who forgot their KVM didn't have PS2 connectors? I went ahead and I dug out one of those dongles for PS2 keyboard and mouse, and I put that in there. Yeah, I did mention that I also bought a KVM console that does USB, but it took me so much to wrestle this current one in the rack that we're just gonna go like this for now, and if I get sick of it, I'll change it out later. So the moment of truth, does the KVM console work? We have a screen up, mouse works, keyboard works, so yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, now I need some shelves so I can put the thin clients and modems in the rack. So there's one shelf down here, and I got one up here in the network rack. So let's get everything out of here and get that shelf from up there. So things have escalated. Let me just go top to bottom here and show you what I've done so far. This isn't fully complete, but this was a pretty good stopping point just to kind of show things off before I finish everything up and tuck it in the closet. But at the top here, we have the ThinkStation. So that serves as the local, to me in my home, Philtel PBX. That's connected to the Addit 600. We'll get to that in a second. That's at the very top. We go down to that KVM console I was mentioning. That's the HP 7600. I found out that it does actually support USB, but it seems to use some sort of A to A cable. And some forum threads I saw suggested that might be a proprietary cable. I've ordered an A to A cable. We'll see if that works. I can't find any of those for sale. So if you have one, please let me know. Or let me know if a normal one just actually works. We'll find out. Anyway, below that is the Avocent MPU 1080. That's my KVM switch. I've covered that before. It's still trucking. I might end up replacing the fan in there, but I think it uses a 30mm fan, which Noctua doesn't make. So no matter what, it's probably still going to be a little noisy, but we might get to that. Then I have a Weiss thin client running Windows 98 with Protel ExpressNet software, and then a Protel modem right here. This is the UPMS 1200, so that's a specific payphone modem I've covered before. Here we have an HP thin client. That's the one that I built out and we covered for the Alcatel payphone programming software. And with that right now, I just have a really generic US Robotics Sportster. I do have a Multitech modem that I'm going to swap that out for because Multitech is explicitly named in the Alcatel software. So I think that that would be a better fit given that it's the exact model that is in the dropdown for supported modems. So everything should, in theory, work pretty well. Next, going down here, I have this empty space here. For right now, I'm probably just going to put a really dumb networking switch because I do need to connect a couple of devices to Ethernet right now. So the ThinkStation and the KVM will need Ethernet. Maybe more stuff in the future, but I'm not going too crazy with the networking. I think that it's just better to throw a really dumb, just sort of consumer grade home little boxy switch in there to get things connected for now. And then next here we have the US Robotics Total Control MP8 and the Total Control Net Server 8. So those aren't turned on right now, but I thought that they really fit in with the color scheme aesthetic that's set forth by that Avocent here. But anyway, if you guys aren't familiar, the MP8 is literally just a USR modem bank. So this, the MP actually stands for modem pool. This on the back, it has 8 RJ11 jacks, and then 8, I guess you'd call them Ethernet jack, the what, AP8s, whatever the name of that is, that are actually just used for console. So phones in, serial out. And it's literally just a bunch of modems in here. The net server is more of their ISP in a box solution. So you still take in the 8 phone lines, but then instead of serial ports out, it has Ethernet connections. So the idea is this whole box does the translation from the phone lines to the network. So I really hope that I can get those working at some point. I think that the modem pool works just fine. The net server, I can't get it to answer a ringing call. So I'll have a phone dial in, the LED will flash, but it just doesn't pick up, and I'm not entirely sure why, but that's something I can bash my head in later about. Be really cool to see those running. So then at the bottom, as I mentioned, there's the ADIT 600 channel bank. So the ADIT is connected to the ThinkStation via a T1 line. There's a T1 E1 card in the ThinkStation, and then there's a T1 jack on the back of the ADIT. So that handles the T1 connection for these modems, and then I also have it connected to a couple of other things. This plastic container here actually has the guts of a payphone in it, and that is connected right now to that channel bank. But in theory, if I just leave this running in the server closet, I can patch phone lines out to other rooms that I want to get on this ADIT. So the ADIT does have a bit better call quality than something like an ATA. I'm not sure how it stands up against some Cisco enterprise equipment, but from what everybody says, this ADIT, or just channel banks in general, are sort of as close to POTS service as you can get without actually having POTS service. So providers actually would have banks of these in COs at a certain point to get analog lines out to real residential customers. These were powering telecom infrastructure in some places for subscribers. So if it's good enough for that, I'm sure it's good enough for the weird stuff that I'm doing. So that's the front. Let me get this flipped around and then we'll take a look at the back. All right, so here we are around back. There's not a lot to cover over here. You can see that most of the cables I use these Velcro cable ties for. I found the red ties first and then I ran out of those, but I found this bunch of black ones. I think these are from Amazon or Monoprice or something. Really cheap, work really well. If you use zip ties in a rack, we're gonna have words, but these Velcro ties, thumbs up. And then you also might see I have little color coordinated tabs here trying to label as much as I can. So again, this is just a cheap pack of tabs, keeps things in check. I like to use yellow for power because it's one of the lightest colors and I can easily check out what is plugged in. I feel like most of the time I'm unplugging both power and Ethernet connections, so I try to make those the most easy to see colors. I know some of you are going to get upset that I'm not following your sort of standard infrastructure, like outdoor street marking colors of red for electricity and orange for telecom, but yeah, this is the way I have it set up. So tucked back in there under the cat's tail, you can see a breakout for RJ11 jacks from the RJ21 connector coming off the channel bank. So that's a really easy way for me to get all of the lines from the channel bank broken out already into stuff that the equipment I have actually uses. And then down here we have this Baytech RPC remote power control PDU. So that's a pretty neat device. It has serial here, it has an Ethernet port. There's wrappers I've seen that'll work to hook this up to more modern stuff like Home Assistant and all sorts of other crazy integrations, but generally this is just acting as a PDU right now. I just wanted something that was kind of rack mount, and by default it has all the ports enabled, so I'm going to leave it like that for now just to make sure everything that needs power can get power, and I'm sure I'll play around with some of this stuff later. There's ways that you can view power usage over time. You can remotely turn on and off stuff, which is great for doing hard resets or just turning stuff off to conserve power. But the coolest thing I think about this is that the power up sequence, it flicks all the relays so you have all of the LEDs sequentially lighting up. So really fun little feature that I'm putting on the back of the rack and hiding out of the way. But yeah, depending on how this evolves, this might move up to the front. I don't know. So before I get everything in the closet, aside from that dumb switch I was talking about, I think there's some more Velcroing to do. There's probably some more labeling to do. And I also want to take some of that equipment in the closet that I'm definitely not going to be touching anytime soon. Or maybe rack mount equipment in some other rooms. I have stacks of weird stuff. I might just throw at least some of the shallow stuff in the back here, since once I get this stuff sort of set up, I'm probably not going to need to access the wiring anytime soon. Which, yeah, I know, famous last words, but we'll see. So yeah, I'm going to tidy that up, and the next time you see this, it should be going into the closet. So I wanted to go back in the closet here and clean things up before I move the new rack in. So I have the 2-post rack here, and I didn't make a lot of changes to that. I just took the working Shiva and slotted that on top. But this was a mess of cable spaghetti, so I just got that all cleaned up and tucked in, since I'm not turning any of this stuff on, really. I did want to maintain the power strip and actually use that for powering the switch that I'm going to use. So I did actually have a layer 3 switch in here, and it looks like it's going to have enough Ethernet connections to the proper subnets configured for the other rack as is. I need to redo the whole thing, but I'm just going to plug stuff into there for now. This is just at a point where that rack is pretty good. We're going to get it in here and get it working, and then slowly fix other stuff. So that strip is set up right there. I'm going to tuck that back in. I have 2 wires over here I'll grab. So I have one line for phone and one line that's our trunk. So the trunk line is going to go to the switch. The phone I'm going to use in conjunction with this little box I built here. So the Cat 6 cable will go in here, and then that'll give me 4 analog phone lines. So I can then route that back to anything I need to at the old setup if I want to get some lines off of that channel bank to other places in the house. If we take a peek back in this corner, you can see I've changed out the bin that I was using over here. I got some magazines stored in there, but that really opens up this space. So the UPS is going to go there. It's going to actually sit on those bricks. Something that I always make sure is when I'm putting equipment down in a basement, you never know if things are going to flood at some point. It's good to just keep things off the ground a little bit. So I'm going to sit the UPS on the bricks, and like I said, I think I can do the Proxmox server right on top of that UPS. We'll see. There's some room for activities over here, so I can build that up. But yeah, let's take a look at the UPS that's going to be coming over here. So we're in my utility closet work area back here, and this is the UPS we're going to be using. So previously I showed off an APC SMT 1500 Smart UPS. I liked it so much, I bought another one. So I got this one. It needed brand new batteries. I replaced those. I thought about getting a rack mount unit, but those were significantly more expensive used than just getting another one of these desktop units, but this still has quite a bit of power for what I'm going to be doing. I'll probably end up coming across a rack mount unit at some point used at a flea market for a great deal, but in the meantime, we got this to go with. So I'm going to put that in the back corner there and then move the new rack in. So the UPS survived the short move. I have it tucked back here into the corner. It's plugged in, turned on, working just fine. All right, we're in. So everything is running, everything came online. We're hooked into the UPS now. And yeah, I flipped the switch on the PDU and everything just came up. So definitely excited to see how this performs. I do have this little sensor here for temperature and humidity, so I'll get alerted if there's something with that, but I think we're pretty good because the air can pool out from under the door into this closet, and it generally stays pretty cool in here anyway. So we'll see how that performs. This is a great first step. I think most people's home labs are always sort of in progress, but I'm really glad that I was able to get all of this moved into this closet see how it does, and that frees up a lot of other space I can use. So definitely want to keep improving on this. Want to get some of the dial-up hardware going, want to play around with the PDU more. There's a lot of room here for different activities, so we'll see where things end up.